Acrobat Studio, your new foundation. Use PDF spaces to generate a presentation. Grab your docs, your permits, your moves. AI levels up your pitch, gets it in a groove. Choose a template with your timeless cool. Come on now, let's flex those tools. Draft, design, deliver, make it sing. AI builds the deck so you can build that thing. Do that, do that, do that with Acrobat.
Learn more at adobe.com/do-that-with-Acrobat.
Picture this. It's the end of a long week. You're unwinding in the tub, listening to your favorite true crime podcast. And then chronic hives come back. Again. In the middle of the episode. What a wet blanket. Looks like another spell of itchy, swollen, red, or skin-colored hives. If you have chronic spontaneous urticaria or CSU, there may be a different treatment option. Worried about your chronic hives interrupting our next episode? Learn more at treatmyhives.com/garage.
Welcome to Off the Record. I'm your host, Nick.
It's good to be seen, and it's good to see you.
Off the Record.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend.
True crime podcast. Be good, be kind, and don't little. Gather around, grab a chair, grab a beer. Let's talk some true crime.
So on Saturday, April 1st, at 10 a.m., Clint picked up his car from Brian's apartment, and he said that he didn't go up to Brian's door even though they had lost him the night before, but he did call him and he left a voicemail that stated just that, "Hey, I lost you last night." Alexis continued to call Brian's phone numerous times that Saturday, and of course she didn't get any answer. Brian was also supposed to show up Saturday morning to either paint or help his dad clean up the house. I've heard both, so I'm not sure which, but he was just supposed to help Randy, but he didn't show up.
Which, again, it's not a huge deal. He's 26 years old, and what we do know is when he parties, he parties. So Clint's probably not super worried at this point. Hey, once he wakes up, or maybe didn't make it home, maybe he went home with somebody else, but once he wakes up, he's going to get a hold of me. This is also probably why Randy Shaffer's not that worried. Oh, my son, I knew he's going out drinking that night. That's probably why he didn't show up. And then his girlfriend obviously is probably thinking the same thing. I've called him several times, but I haven't heard back from him, but I'm sure I will. But also, like you said, he had plans to meet his father at his father's house to help him paint or do something. But he also had plans that he made with his friend, one of the Ryan brothers, right?
Yeah, he made friends to hang out with Matt and Melanie Ryan on Saturday evening. But of course, he didn't show up for either. And all day Saturday, there was no cell phone activity or credit card activity for anything have to do with Brian's account.
Right. Now, you have cell phone records that you have received from the private investigator that worked with Randy Shaffer, Brian's dad. Am I correct in saying that the cell phone records you have stop the early mornings of April 1st?
Yeah, the bills I have are very sporadic. My last phone call is actually the 2:01 a.m. call where Meredith calls Brian from Clint's phone. That's where my records stop. So on Sunday, April 2nd, Alexis was continuing to call Brian's phone, but she was getting a little more concerned. And when she couldn't get a hold of Brian, she decided to call Clint. And Clint told her that he had not seen Brian since the night before at the Ugly Tuna Saloona. So Clint decided to call around, and he called Brian's friend, Matt Ryan, and asked if he had seen Brian. And Matt told him, of course, he hadn't, but they did have plans on Saturday, but Brian didn't show up. So everyone's starting to get a little more concerned. So Alexis calls Randy, and Randy tells her the same thing, that Brian didn't show up on Saturday to help him with the cleanup and that he hadn't seen or talked to him.
But since we don't have the cell phone records, we don't know if his father's calling him a bunch or not.
Correct. Alexa then asked Clint to go over to Brian's apartment to wait on him to see if he was there, and Clint did so. And he checked around and didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Brian's bed was made, the shower was dry, and everything that seemed to be in place.
Do we know how he got into the apartment?
We don't. I've actually been told two different things. I have been told that he had an extra key, and I have been told that Derek let him in. But I actually do not think either one of those is true, but I don't have an answer to that. Clint decided to call Meredith to let her know what was going on and told her that no one had seen Brian since they were out with him on Friday night. Clint and Alexis decide to wait around at the apartment, and Clint, Alexis, and Meredith begin calling jails and hospitals anywhere they could, just seeing if maybe they had someone matching Brian's description or an unidentified patient. A little later, Derek showed up at Brian's apartment, and shortly after that, Randy showed up. They then decided that they were going to call the Columbus Police Department, but when the officer showed up, he told them that it had not been 48 hours and that it was completely legal for an adult to go missing, and that if Brian didn't show up at the airport on Monday, then they would file the police report.
Yeah, which which is, I just don't think this is the way we should be handling people going missing, even though like everybody has the legal right to not be found.
Everyone wasn't satisfied with not being able to file the police report, so they decided to do some ground searching themselves, and they knew his last location anyone had seen him was the Ugly Tuna. So Randy and Brian and Clint, Alexis, and a few other people all walked around like the campus area, around all of the bars. They were checking every dumpster they could find, just looking for any sign of Brian to see if they could find him. Of course, they didn't. And Alexis decided to spend the night at Brian's apartment that night before going to the airport on Monday morning.
Just because I don't know, she stayed there alone.
She did, yes.
So what's their threat level midnight, right? Are they at this point after they search for him, that I'm sure they're making more calls to his cell phone. So now we have Derek, his brother, has searched for him. We have the father, Randy, searching for him. Clint, which was at the bar with him that night, is searching for him. Brian's girlfriend searching for him. She's going to stay in this apartment by herself because she's supposed to hit the airport and go on vacation with this guy. But I am assuming that everybody's going, this is not good. Is that the pulse of the room, or are there some individuals that don't think this is that big of a deal?
So I actually think that there was some concern, but I don't think that it was a huge amount of concern at that point in time, because I had mentioned to you that Brian was a wanderer. He wandered off on vacations. He took vacations that he didn't even tell anyone he was going on. This was just kind of who he was. So while they were concerned, I don't think it was to the point where they were really worried until he did not show up at the airport.
Well, it's not even showing up to the airport. So, okay, I should slow down a little bit. So does the girlfriend go to the airport?
She does. Alexis goes to the airport and she goes to the gate and waits and everything, and he does not show up.
And to me, that's concerning. But what's more concerning is he doesn't show up to his apartment before it's time to leave.
I agree, because the one thing that has always concerned me and that no one has actually been able to give me an answer to is, did Alexis have Brian's ticket, or did Brian have his ticket for the airport that morning? Because how would he have even gotten to the gate if she had his ticket?
So she goes to the airport. Brian doesn't show up. What happens next?
Alexis and Randy went to the Columbus Police Department and they filed the official missing persons report. On that same day, Clint emailed Amber, and I had mentioned that she was a student in one of the classes where he was a TA. And he had told her that no one had seen Brian, and Amber emailed him back and sent her phone number, and then Clint called her to tell her everything that was going on. In return, Amber then called Brighton to let her know that Brian was missing. On this day, the Columbus Police Department requested the surveillance footage from the Gateway security, and they also put a communication ping service on Brian's phone through Singular Wireless, and they paid $3,500 for that. Now, what the ping service would do is It would not be usage pings. It was just communication pings. It was the tower trying to see if it would find the phone. In order for the tower to communicate with the phone had to be on. So they started sending pings out on Brian's phone.
Yeah, so just to be clear, the phone doesn't have to make calls. The phone just has to be on, and they'll send pings to the phone. And what they're hoping is that they'll be able to get some GPS location of Brian, and that will lead them to Brian.
And
correct.
Real quick, I want to stick on this for one moment here. This was initiated at what time on what day?
This was initiated on Monday afternoon.
Monday afternoon.
April 3rd.
And the service was with who?
The cell phone provider was Singular Wireless.
Okay, so just to clarify here on this point, and to be very thorough, the phone has to be on for there to be a signal. But also a factor in this is that phone has to be in range of Singular towers.
Correct. And
that may seem like a silly statement in 2026. In 2006, it's not such a silly statement as wasn't everybody fighting in advertising how good their service was and how many towers they had and in what locations across this country.
I mean, Brian's phone didn't even have GPS technology, so we are definitely in a completely different time than we are now when it comes to technology.
So where does the investigation go from there?
So actually that Monday evening, Brian's phone began communicating with the pings, and it was communicating all around campus and appeared that it was moving. So on Tuesday, April 4th, Brian's case hit the local media, and out of fear of someone stealing Brian's bank cards, since his wallet and everything went missing with him, Randall Shaffer canceled Brian's cards. This is also the day where a homeless man that was actually known to many officers at the Columbus Police Department, he claimed that he spotted Brian eating a sandwich behind United Dairy Farmers, which was very close to the Ugly Tuna Saloona where Brian went missing.
So that the United Dairy Farmers was only a couple blocks away from the Ugly Tuna Saloona.
And not only that United Dairy Farmer receives, a lot of business throughout the night. Even at the 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. hours of the early morning, there are people going in and out of there all night long. About
a month after Brian went missing, someone actually smashed in the door of his apartment and they broke in. They stole a 19-inch TV that had a built-in DVD player and a few different DVDs. And they were making a lot of noise over there, and the people that were in the apartment next door actually heard it, and they knew that Brian was missing, so they immediately called the Columbus Police Department. Now, I know this seems strange, but there was actually a couple of break-ins around that area, so yes, it's strange that Brian is missing and his apartment was broken into, but it was kind of the norm in that area.
Well, like you said, the day Brian goes missing in Columbus and the surrounding areas, like the listeners know, me and the Colonel, we're from Columbus. So the day this hits the news, it was like, holy shit, guy goes into a bar and he's not seen leaving the bar. So this was being talked about a lot. But at this point in my life, I was spending a lot of time on the Ohio State University campus. Now, you're from a little bit further south than Columbus, than we are, but are you hearing about these news reports as well?
Oh, yeah, it was all over all of the local news. Of course, we had the Columbus local news station, so yeah, we were seeing everything.
Me and Nick have talked about this case. I think the first time we talked about this was probably 10 years ago. So 10 years has passed. It's 20 years of him going missing. But I remember at some point, and I could be wrong, you have some remembrance of this as well, but I want to say that there was a website that they set up where there was a section of surveillance footage that you could watch.
Yeah, there was, yes.
Yeah, because I've talked to people about that before, when they're people that I've met that are like, hey, I'm into true crime and I've really looked into this missing person case, Brian Shaffer. I'm like, have you seen the surveillance footage? Because at a time period, I remember you could go to a website and watch it. And I remember watching it multiple times as if I was going to see anything, because I don't know who Brian is at this point, and I don't know who his friends are. So I couldn't tell you this person is this person or this person is that person. We have this tip possibly coming in from a known homeless person to the Columbus PD. But during that time period, they're also doing searches. Randy Shaffer is in the media. Brian's dad is talking to pretty much anybody he can. And not only is local news stations reporting on this, but we also have the Columbus Dispatch running stories on his disappearance. We have the Lantern, which was, I believe, the campus paper, running stories on Brian's disappearance as well.
Yeah, his case was absolutely everywhere.
I would love to see the officer's written statement from this homeless gentleman who provided information, who says, I may have seen Brian Shaffer or somebody that looks like because if the way that I take this, unless you have further detail on how they came into this information, my bet would be that they're out. They have a picture. They have a photo of Brian Shaffer, our missing individual. And who are they going to talk to? They're going to talk to convenience store clerks. They're going to talk to persons that they know that would regularly be out and about and on the streets late at night after 2 a.m., around 3 a.m. And this homeless individual would be a perfect person to approach and talk to. Look, everybody has a different perception of homeless individuals. My perception of most of them have been that they usually play nice with the cops because they frequently are talking with them, not because they're up to no good, but because they rely on the streets that they live on, and they rely on the neighborhoods that they are living in, and they want to be friendly with these cops and play nice because they don't want to be pushed down the road. They don't want to be asked to leave. They don't want to be asked to move on to a different location. And so while I think this information is intriguing, I think we should take this with a grain of salt. There would be a lot of persons that look like a white male in their mid-20s, dressed like a college student, out in the middle of the night on a weekend. And so while I think that this individual is trying to be helpful, I don't want anybody to walk away from this conversation going, man, they saw Brian Shaffer just a few blocks away eating a sandwich behind the UDF.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's nothing really unique about Brian. He was a handsome guy. Like I said, he was in good shape, but he's basically average height. He has a typical haircut for, like you said, college students. He dresses like a typical college student. There wasn't anything, it wasn't like he had a face tattoo like Mike Tyson. So I think the problem with an individual going missing that doesn't have a unique look or some unique feature, you're going to have a lot of individuals claiming that they possibly saw Brian.
So, Nick, I would actually like to add on a little bit to what you said as well. The Columbus Police Department did speak to the homeless man while they were out canvassing and looking for Brian. And the man stated not only did he see Brian, but he said he yelled out to Brian and said, "Hey, man, they're looking for you." So I asked Sergeant Hurst, was this a credible man? Do you think he really saw anything? And based on what Hurst told me, it seems that this man struggled with alcohol a lot too and was not always credible.
So where does the investigation or timeline go from here?
So there were many searches done. There were 2 sets of dogs from Columbus Police Department taken into the Ugly Tuna Saloona. There was also dogs taken to Ugly Tuna Saloona that Randy hired himself from a different part of the state.
And I think that's important because it wasn't like people in Brian's life weren't doing anything. At this time, we have his girlfriend constantly calling his phone just to see, one, if he'd answer, but maybe also to help with this ping technology. we have these searches by his family members, but also friends. And then we have his dad involved as far as, hey, I'll pay for my own dogs to come in. And Columbus PD, I think it's a good look on them to go, hey, if he wants to pay for it, we're not going to stop him. More the merrier, right?
We're going to go into the Ugly Tuna Saloona a lot more when we get to the theories, but I do want to point out that was probably the most searched location throughout the whole investigation when it comes to Brian's disappearance. And not only that, the building has changed quite a bit since 2006. The Ugly Tuna Saloona is not there anymore. Actually, the entrance where you would even walk into the bar is completely covered over. And that is offices now for Ohio State.
Yeah, and I don't know if Nick has experienced this, but the amount of true crime friends that I've met throughout the years, anytime they come to visit Columbus, I would take them there. And then eventually it was like, well, I can take you there, but it's totally different. It doesn't look the same. There's not even an entrance point anymore.
Yeah, a couple things here that we should make clear. While the captain's absolutely right in his brief description of the bar, it's kind of square shape, rectangle shape. You can see most, if not, you can see most points of the bar from really any corner while you're standing inside, maybe with the exception of course, there's going to be doors that separate the bar from the restrooms, but there's also, forgive me, Captain, I can't recall the number, but there was 3 balconies. It's really just the bar spills out onto these balconies, but there were 3 or 4 of them that I recall from the last time I've been in there. And as said, it's, and it's not even the Ugly Tuna anymore. So I've not been in there in many years. I think the last time I went in there was shortly before we covered it in 2015, and shortly after. The last time I was in that building that housed the Ugly Tuna was for a movie. It was the 2022. I think it was the 15-year anniversary of the Zodiac movie, and they were showing that again. There's a movie theater in there, and I'm blanking on the name at the moment.
The Gateway Film Center.
That's right.
That's why I like talking to Kelly, because anytime I don't know something, she knows the answer.
And circling back to the dog conversation, that points to me is the thoroughness of the intent of the search for Brian Shaffer. Okay. The thoroughness of the intent on behalf of CPD and the Shaffer family, because those canine units, those canine officers, meaning the dogs, have a different skill set than a traditional search and rescue dog or a traditional cadaver dog. And so that to me points towards the thoroughness, or at least the intention of being very thorough in this search.
Well, and I think also, like, this case is difficult, I think, to wrap your head around, because you go, okay, well, you go up this escalator and then you go into a bar. Like I said, the bar is small enough. You have a bar, you have a kitchen, you have restrooms, you have a little bit of a balcony. But if you gave me 5 minutes and said there's somebody, let's just say you cleared the whole place, but you had a Willy Wonka golden ticket, and you said you got 5 minutes to go into this facility and look through the bathroom and look through the kitchen and look through the bar and look through the balcony, there's no place to really hide it. I could find that golden ticket probably within 5 minutes. Where this case gets more difficult is it's not just about the Ugly Tuna. It's about this complex. And this complex is very large, has multiple, like you said, it has a movie theater, it has bars, it has restaurants,
a large parking garage.
Then you have a large courtyard. That courtyard then leads you to another complex that's identical to the other one, right? They're just mirroring each other. And then, like you said, you have these alleyways, but then you also have this very large parking garage. So that's where I think it becomes a lot more complex as far as the searching.
Right, but they did do a lot of searching, not just inside the Ugly Tuna, like the entire Gateway Plaza. They had dogs down in the construction area. They removed electrical panels from the wall. They had manhole covers lifted. Like, they really did search that building top to bottom. They also searched the local landfill. And I know that that sounds like a very difficult task. However, they were able to pinpoint down to a very small section of where the downtown trash was going and where it was dumped inside the landfill. And it was also a very new part of the landfill that had only been open a couple months where that trash was being dumped. So it wasn't as difficult to search as some may think.
Well, and also it's the trash going through the different conveyor belts. And I've talked to individuals that work at these facilities that have found bodies, but they normally don't find them inside the dump, but they normally find those bodies as they're sorting the trash before it even goes into the dump.
Right. And that's actually what Sergeant Hurst told me. He told me that the trash would come in and it was sorted, and some of it would go to the local dump, and then some of it was sent out to Tennessee to a recycling facility. One of the other searches that they used dogs for to search was they actually went to the Shaffer family home in Baltimore, Ohio, and they took search and cadaver dogs through Randy Shaffer's house and around his property.
Yeah, and when I first heard this, it was like, dun, dun, dun. Why are they taking cadaver dogs multiple times to Brian's father's house?
There was actually a tip called into Columbus Police Department that Randy Shaffer had killed Brian and buried him in his backyard.
And like we said, Brian and his father, Randy, go out to dinner the night Brian goes missing. It's possible that Clint and Brian and Randy had a beer before Randy and Clint went out for the night, but we have no alibi for Randy Shaffer at this point. So if you're law enforcement, it's not out of the realm of possibility to go, okay, well, we have this, disagreement, or we have this tension in the family because the mother passed away. She changed the will. The husband's upset about that. He's trying to get his children, both boys, to agree to, hey, give me some of the money and you keep some of it. So we have this tension, we have this conflict, and this son goes missing and the dad has no alibi. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to question him, and then also to have either scent dogs or cadaver dogs come out to his property.
With shorter days and packed schedules, it's easy for kids to lose focus. IXL gives them a simple, stress-free way to keep skills sharp and stay engaged without adding pressure. IXL is an award-winning online learning platform that helps kids truly understand what they're learning. Whether they're building math confidence, strengthening reading and writing skills, or reviewing science concepts. It covers math, language arts, science, and social studies from pre-K through 12th grade with personalized, interactive content that adapts to each child's level and pace. IXL is used in 96 of the top 100 school districts in the U.S. It's an easy way to support learning as the school year moves into its most important stretch. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And True Crime Garage listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/garage. Visit IXL.com/garage to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. So many people are focused on where their money is today. Acorns is the financial wellness app that cares about where your money is going tomorrow. And with the Acorns Potential Screen, you can find out what your money is capable of. Acorns is easy. You can sign up in minutes and start automatically investing your spare money, even if all you've got is spare change. Sign up now and Acorns will boost your new account with a $5 bonus investment. Join the over 15 million all-time customers who have already saved and invested over $27 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/garage or download the Acorns app to get started. Paid non-client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 2 compensation provided. Potential subject to various factors such as customers' accounts, age, and investment settings. Does not include Acorns fees. Results do not predict or represent the performance of any Acorns portfolio. Investment results may vary. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/garage. A well-built wardrobe is about pieces that work together and hold up over time. That's what Quince does best. Premium materials, thoughtful design, and everyday staples that feel easy to wear and easy to rely on even as the weather shifts. Quince has the everyday essentials with quality that lasts. Organic cotton sweaters, polos for every occasion, lighter jackets that keep you warm in the changing seasons. The list goes on. Quince works directly with top factories and cuts out the middlemen, so you're not paying for brand markup, just quality clothing. I've told you before, one of my favorite and best purchases I made late last year was Quince's men's Cotton Peak knit overshirt. It comes in 3 colors, and I love it so much that I got 2 of them. And I always pick up tees and some socks while shopping Quince. And Quince.com is not just great clothing. Shop for furniture, jewelry, travel, men's, women's, baby, and kids. Get a Valentine's gift for her. Get a Valentine's gift for him. I love Quince.com. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/garage for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/garage. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/garage.
Stop paying too much for wireless just because that's how it's always been. Mint Mobile exists purely to fix that. Same coverage, same speed, just without the inflated price tag. The premium wireless you expect, unlimited talk, text, and data, but at a fraction of what others charge. And this is why I love Mint Mobile. It's the same wireless that I always got. Unlimited talk, text, and data. But guess what? At a fraction of the price. I'm saving roughly around $100 per month. That's crazy. That's $1,200 a year. With Mint Mobile, I'm getting great coverage at a fraction of the price. I couldn't be happier. Ready to stop paying more than you have to? New customers can make the switch today. And for a limited time, get unlimited premium wireless for just $15 per month. Switch now at mintmobile.com/TCG. That's mintmobile.com/TCG. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, and $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Over 50 gigabytes. May slow when the network is busy. Capable device required. Ability, speed, and coverage varies. Additional terms apply. See mintmobile.com. Switch now at mintmobile.com/TCG.
So in September of 2006, Brian's phone just continued to go to voicemail every time Alexis would try to call him. But suddenly his phone began ringing again. It would ring 3 or 4 times and then the voicemail would kick on. So she continued to call it, and actually all of his family and friends kept calling. But the one thing that Brian's phone didn't do at that point in time was it did not ping in Hilliard, Ohio. This was actually a glitch. The ringing of the phone was only due to an overloaded tower, and the call was handed off to another tower. So while it appeared hopeful to everyone when Brian's phone started ringing, it wasn't anything more than an overloaded cell phone tower.
And the second part of your statement with that is it was not pinging in Hilliard, Ohio.
It was not.
Yeah, and this would be very difficult, especially for the girlfriend, because you're calling, it rings, goes straight to voicemail, and now all of a sudden it's ringing multiple times, and probably the multiple rings is the service being passed over. So, but there was a lot of speculation about Brian's phone pinging in Hilliard, Ohio, which is, 15, 20 minutes from Brian's apartment.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion there because a lot of people think that that phone ping happened at that point in time. His phone did ping in Hilliard, Ohio, but it was in the immediate days following his disappearance when Columbus Police Department had that ping service put on that we talked about earlier.
So let's just talk about this ping service let's dive into it a little bit more. So they run the service right after he goes missing. We have some pings and some movement around the Ohio State campus area, and then we have some pings and movement happening just outside the Columbus area as well.
Yeah, there's some around Grove City. There's some around Greenlawn Avenue, around Lou Berliner Park. There's some around Scioto Darby Creek Road, some in Hilliard. Kinney and Lane, there was a phone ping. His phone was just all over the place.
And do we have any rhyme or reason for this?
I was told it appears that the phone was moving because it wouldn't have been something as simple as handing off to another tower, because some of the towers that it was pinging off of, it would have been too far out for a stationary phone to find that tower, if that makes sense.
And this is when exactly is this movement taking place?
So I was told that this ping service was put on and they paid $3,500 and it lasted the whole month of April and a few days into May.
And starting on April 3rd. And then during this month, the phone is moving, it's active and it's moving OSU campus, Grove City, which is a suburb of Columbus, Hilliard, which is another suburb of Columbus, and then as well as the Greenlawn area.
Correct.
And you also said Kenny and Lane, which, while if you zoom out, those locations all appear to be very close to one another. But as far as just driving around the greater Columbus area, I would not describe those as extremely close to one another. This is a good amount of distance here.
Right. There was actually also one that I forgot to mention around Scioto Downs. And that's quite a distance away from some of the other locations as well.
That's very, very south on High Street, which High Street is also Route 23. We should note here the Gateway building that housed the Ugly Tuna Saloona is on North High Street, or was on North High Street. This would be South High Street, but it's so South High Street that it is south of the outer belt that surrounds the greater Columbus area, 270.
Okay, so they're saying there's no rhyme or reason for this. This wouldn't just be his cell phone being transferred to different towers. His phone is moving, but to me, this is not evidence that Brian is moving around. This is just evidence that his phone is moving around.
Correct. I have no evidence that Brian actually had his phone on him when he went missing. We just know that his phone is missing as well.
And you said that we have this possible sighting, but again, it's probably a nothing burger coming from the homeless individual that claims he saw Brian. But what about other eyewitness reports? Did other people claim to see Brian?
They did. Actually, there was a tip that came in very early, and it was of a sighting of a very handsome man with a black backpack sitting on the ground outside of Wendy's in Pickerington, Ohio. A lady walked up to him because she thought maybe he needed some food or something. So she was like, just checking on him and asked if she could get him anything. And he said, "No, I'm getting ready to hit the road." That was about the extent of their interaction. So another caller called in and said they saw a very handsome man with a black backpack hitchhiking on 270. Of course, you see things like this all the time. But that second person that called in and said they saw the person hitchhiking was the people that lived across the street from Randy and Renee Shaffer. So they actually knew Brian.
So they're calling in saying, we saw Brian.
Yes, and it just so happened to be in the same area where the lady said she saw him in Pickerington at the Wendy's. So it was two separate tips on the same guy, one of the people actually knowing Brian.
And I want to be very clear here, because I'm a person that firmly believes that words have meaning. We mean what we say, and we say what we mean, especially in these critical situations. The people that live, that are essentially neighbors of Brian's father, they are saying we saw a guy hitchhiking on 270, or they're saying we saw Brian Shaffer hitchhiking on 270, because those are two very different statements to me.
They said Brian Shaffer.
Okay, just to be clear. I want to point out too here for folks that, not even with this case, just in generalities here, but to hitchhike on an outer belt is not, if you were to be riding your bicycle or walking, that's actually illegal behavior. That's an illegal action here. You could be picked up or ticketed for doing such a thing. So it's not like he's just on a busy road or a busy thoroughfare and walking or biking. This statement is there was a man thumb in the air hitchhiking on the outer belt. And that's something that if an officer, state patrol, or whatever driving by and spotted this individual, that is cause for them to stop and talk to that individual. Now, would they on most occasions? I cannot say that, but that is technically an illegal activity.
I would like to state that both of these tips claim that they were April 1st, the Saturday. So it was later in that day that they both claimed to see him.
So they go out partying on Friday. This is just speculation, right? They go out partying. Brian, Clint, and Meredith, they lose connection with each other. We don't see Brian at his apartment. We see Brian's car. We don't have his wallet. We have nothing. And then we have some eyewitnesses saying that morning we see somebody hitchhiking. Because the thing, I think it drives me nuts, and I think it also drives you nuts as well, Kelly, is when people talk about Brian starting a new life or disappearing on his own accord, people almost assume that it has to happen the night he goes missing. And my argument has always been, well, he could have left the bar. He could have got home. This could have been the plan all along. And then he wakes up in his apartment on Saturday and says, all right, it's time to go missing.
Yeah, because the other half of no one finding him at his home is also no one confirming that he wasn't at his home the following day.
Exactly. I have no proof that he didn't make it home. And when I asked Sergeant Hurst how they knew that he went missing on Friday night, and it was, well, the bath or the shower was dry when we got there on Sunday and his bed was made. Well, I mean, if you take a shower early Saturday morning and make your bed, it's still going to be dry when they get there on Sunday. So it doesn't mean anything to me that the shower was dry and his bed was made.
And like you said, all his belongings seemed to be there at the time. Brian was not only a medical student, but you made the comment, you talked about the comment that Brian made, or the post that he made about, well, this medical thing is just for a time period until I start my band or my band takes off. But it also seems like he left all his guitars behind as well. So some people point that out as evidence of, well, he didn't go missing on his own. But I think, if somebody went looking for him, his friends, his family, his girlfriend, and they go into the apartment and there were items like his guitar missing, I think that would be giant red flags that he was there.
Right. It seemed like everything was in place. Like even his jewelry was laying on his dresser and things along those lines. It didn't appear that anything was missing in those early days until after the burglary of his apartment.
Well, and like you said, he's went on trips before without telling people. But you'd think if he's going to head to the airport or he's going to head to the bus station, he could have drove himself. He wouldn't have to hitchhike. And these reports of people seeing him, we have to remind people that this is in Pickerington. This is his hometown. This is where he went to school. This is where he went to high school. But this is a good 20, 30 minutes from his apartment on campus.
Just real quick for the sake of clarity, there are obviously this being campus area near downtown area, there would be COTA bus stops on every few blocks or corners in this area, so that there are means of him getting around if that was in fact what he was choosing to do.
Yeah, and I do know that CPD did check with the bus companies, and they checked with cab companies, and they checked the airports. So pretty much from the remainder of 2006 until 2008, it was very minimal searches done for Brian, but Randy would do different events for Brian. He got his picture on the side of a race car. He got him covered on several different channels. He continued to just keep Brian's name out there. So in September of 2008, Ohio was rocked with some hurricane force winds, and I believe it was from Hurricane Ike. I'm not sure if you guys remember, but it was pretty crazy. It was like 80 to 90 mile per hour winds at some points in time. Well, Randy had called around and was checking on all of his friends, everyone that he knew, telling them to make sure they stay inside, that to make sure everything is safe before they go outside. However, Randy Shaffer did not take his own advice, and he went outside to a back building to get the generator out. I'm not actually sure if he lost power or if he was just afraid he was going to lose power. But when he was doing so, a branch from a tree in his backyard had fallen, and it fell on Randy when the winds picked up, and it actually killed him.
Which I believe this actually made news because, like you said, this is 2 years after Brian goes missing. But Brian's name was not only in news reports, but it's in the local papers, it's in the campus papers. And like you said, Randy was in communication with a lot of these individuals. But this news of Randy passing then kind of sparks more attention on the disappearance of Brian Shaffer as well.
It does. And actually, there were governors and I believe a senator, and I can't remember who else, that wrote letters after Randy's passing, just basically crediting him for all of his work he did for missing persons, including his own son.
Yeah, this was a hell of a storm. It was, I was living in Columbus at the time, and I believe we lost power at my home for 10 days, which is extremely excessive. Like I think in my lifetime, that's got to be the longest that any home I lived in went without power. And that was just due to the wind damage that it did here in Central Ohio.
Yeah, my kids were actually little at the time, and we watched from our window as the wind blew away their trampoline and their playhouse.
Well, you can blame yourself for not putting those away in the garage. But his passing then sparks some weird activity.
It did. So, as a lot of people know, that when you pass away, you have an obituary, but there's also a website called legacy.com that posts online obituaries. Well, Don Corbett, the private investigator on Brian's case, had logged in and was looking at Randy's obituary, and there was a message there that said, "I love you, Dad, comma, Brian," and then in parentheses it said U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, of course, CPD
Bizarre.
jumped on it as soon as they were told about it.
But what do we learn from this? Is this communication actually coming from the Virgin Islands?
No, it actually came from a public library computer in Hilliard, Ohio.
Which again is strange because we have some cell phone possible movements in Hilliard. We have now this message coming from a local library in Hilliard, Ohio. So it seems like Hilliard, Ohio is weirdly connected to the disappearance of this guy.
Yeah, it definitely comes up a few times. So I do know that Columbus Police Department obviously looked into this, and unfortunately, you did not have to sign in to use one of the public computers, so they did not know the identity of the person. But they did try to pull surveillance footage from a gas station across the street, but unfortunately, there was nothing found from that.
Yeah, so we have no evidence that this was actually Brian, but I think, not to go like too much down the rabbit hole, but it's also possible that Brian, if he did go missing or just wanted to start a new life, or however you want to frame that, it is possible that he had somebody there that was setting this message for him.
Yeah, or just someone who possibly knew that did it on their own for Randy after his passing.
The not signing in portion of that strikes me. While I have no reason to doubt that we're getting honest information on that, as someone who frequents the Columbus libraries and the greater Columbus libraries, I have never used a computer where I didn't have to sign in. When I say sign in, it's to the point of you type in your library card number to use and access that computer. And then they give you a time limit on the amount of time that you can use that computer as well. Now, what I will say on that, this would be rather clever of somebody if they wanted to be anonymous. The catalog computers where you would search for books or authors are open and already linked to the internet. So you do not have to sign into those, but they're also not a browsing computer or a working computer. So if somebody was very crafty, and if I am right in my statement, I'm not going to say that I'm 100% right, because I don't think I've ever set foot in a Hilliard library, but the captain will back me up on this. At one point, all the suburb libraries were connected to the Columbus Public Library.
Right.
Metropolitan Library, as they call it. I believe that was prior to 2008. I feel very strongly that was prior to 2008. So again, if somebody went off and used one of those catalog computers, that would be very crafty, and that would be a way that could go down, and my statement also being correct that you did have to sign in. I don't know that they would be able to pinpoint it to exactly what computer. That would be interesting too. I don't want to go down the road of IP addresses and things of that nature, because it's something I just don't understand.
Kelly, what are your thoughts on this post that was made?
I kind of go back and forth. The biggest part of me is, how many coincidences can there be in one case? And I feel like that there's just a bunch in Brian's case. I actually lean towards this not being a hoax, but I actually think CPD knows who did it. Because Nick's 100% right. Even in growing up in a small town in Ohio, when we needed to use a computer, you got like an hour time block and you had to sign your name. You had to put in your library card information. I feel like maybe that's just a part that they're going to hold close to the vest and not really put out there. But I do think that Columbus Police Department knows who made that post.
And with that sign in, Kelly, and you'll back me up on this, it's not just your library card, but it's also followed by a 4-digit PIN. That is further indicator that, somebody didn't just find somebody's library card in the parking lot and on the ground and walk in and use that. You would have to have that PIN information as well.
Nick, that's actually real intriguing to me, because I had never thought about the card catalog computers before. And Brian was very tech savvy. When he went to Ohio University, his degree was actually computers. And he actually designed a video game that I accidentally stumbled upon when I was researching his case that he had done for a class project. So he was very tech savvy.
Nick also studied computer.
Well, it's for this exact reason that the captain keeps me around.
Just so you can log in for me at the library.
just throw in some of these ideas.
So Brian's father, Randy, passes away due to this windstorm. I mean, what a awful way to go. And now you have this family that just 2 years, basically 2.5 years prior, you have the mother, Renee. She passes away from cancer. You have Brian. He goes missing. Then you have the father. He is killed in this windstorm. And all that's left is Derek Shaffer.
Yeah, Derek lost his whole immediate family within 2.5 years. So I would actually like to circle back just for a second and talk about that post on the legacy page, because the other thing that is really interesting to me is it had not been released that there was a tip. Well, I guess I wouldn't even say tip. There was a sighting of Brian in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And it was actually one of the first tips that the Columbus Police Department received. It was a couple from Columbus who had been on their honeymoon, and they were there and they were at a restaurant or something along those lines having dinner, and they had a waiter who had a striking resemblance to Brian Shaffer and was actually wearing a name tag who said his name is Brian. And as soon as they got home from their trip, Randy's death was all over the news again. And Brian's case had popped up or something. So they immediately called the Columbus Police Department and told them about the tip. So the fact that the U.S. Virgin Islands was on that post could have been a coincidence, but it could have also been someone that knew something, since that was a tip as well.
Yeah, and I think the information we don't know about this tip is when they came home, did this couple hear about this post that was made? And do you see what I'm saying? Did this spark something of, well, we had a waiter named Brian and he kind of looked like this guy? Or was it just simply that they came home and went, hey, remember the guy that went missing from the Ugly Tuna? You see what I'm saying? Like,
I do. I'm not sure actually how it came about, but I was told that it was something along the lines that they made the call after Randy's passing. So I'm not sure.
We do have a lot more to get into, because at this point in the timeline, you're not starting your investigation yet. You just know of the case. And so I think we need to dive in to what you have learned once you get involved in actually investigating this case. I want to thank everybody for joining us here in the garage each and every week. Stick around for part 3 of Brian Shaffer, 20 Years Missing. Until then, be good, be kind, and don't litter.
Hey everybody, Ted Danson here to tell you about my podcast with my longtime friend and sometimes co-host Woody Harrelson. It's called Where Everybody Knows Your Name, and we're back for another season. I'm so excited to be joined this season by friends like John Mulaney, David Spade, Sarah Silverman, Ed Helms, and many more. You don't want to miss it. Listen to Where Everybody Knows Your Name with me, Ted Danson, and Woody Harrelson sometimes, wherever you get your podcasts.